Hello, and welcome into another episode of the Friendly Critic Podcast. My name is Jack Murphy. On today's episode, my wife Natalie joins me. We get into what are her top 5 movies, what does she like about movies, her favorite genres, as well as getting into a bit of what some of her favorite writers and producers are as well. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome in to the podcast. I have a special guest today, my wife, Natalie Murphy. Welcome.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, I think you know the basic concept of my podcast, Friendly Critic.
Yep.
Talking about movies, TV that we like. So, gonna kind of just start off with how long have you been watching movies, or like what's the first movie you remember watching?
Well, I have been watching movies and TV since I was really little, probably about 2 years old. But I would say like the first movie going experience I remember is going to see The Princess Diaries in movie theater with my grandma and my sister. It was a
Nice.
fun one. Yeah.
How old was that?
I think it was released in like 2001, so I would have been about 5 or 6.
Dang, okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first one that I can really remember. That's pretty young.
You were about 5 when you saw Jurassic Park for the first time, weren't you?
Probably. Well, yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I would have been like kindergarten, but I remember watching Finding Nemo in the theaters. And my mom said that I laughed like a ton at Dory or whatever because she was funny.
Yeah,
Classic Disney
classic.
film. Okay, so Princess Diaries, you said?
Yeah.
So did that, I don't know, did that inspire you at all to get more into movies, or is just first one you can remember?
That's just the first one I remember seeing. I've always enjoyed watching movies. I've never been like a huge like movie buff. I don't know the stats of things, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've enjoyed watching stories play out on the screen.
Let's see, I have some kind of prompts that prepped you with a little bit.
Yeah.
So, uh, do you have your top 5 movies of all time?
Yeah,
Your
of
top
all time.
5.
I think the old standby that it's hard to narrow it down to just 5 favorites, but I think that 2 standouts are The Secret Life of Walter Mitty from 2013, which is directed by Ben Stiller,
Mm-hmm.
and Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version directed by Joe Wright with Keira Knightley.
You got the directors and everything.
Yeah, I came prepared.
Hmm?
I came prepared.
Yeah, solid choices.
Hmm.
I've seen both of those
Several times.
several times. Been made to watch Pride and Prejudice several times. Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah, I think that's what makes them my favorite is that I can rewatch them over and over again without getting tired of them. That the aspects that I enjoy about them are consistent.
Kind of yeah. Secret Life of Walter Mitty definitely has that like adventure appeal to everyone's kind of desire for more in life,
Hmm.
which I appreciated about that movie.
Yeah.
And also just like how Ben Stiller's character, he could challenge himself, right, to do more than he thought
Yeah.
he was capable of, which is cool. Good message, I think.
Yeah.
Is that what you like about it, or?
Yeah, I think the story is definitely part of it. I think a good story makes a good movie, but I also enjoyed the pacing. The soundtrack is amazing for Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and I think that the believability of the actors is something that I really appreciate about movies. I, I think that all of the actors involved really played their parts really well.
Like the authenticity of their
Hmm.
performance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I'm a sucker for how things make me feel. And so I think the fact that I did leave that movie and still continue to leave that movie feeling motivated to do more and to feel like I can accomplish big things um, is something that I think is very unique in some films.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that about Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I have seen the original. I didn't get the same feeling from
Yeah.
that one, but
When was that made?
oh, I don't know. It
It's
was in
kind of
black and
older,
white,
right?
so yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but it's the same guy who starred opposite Bing Crosby in White Christmas.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's pretty old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like that in movies as well, because I appreciate movies that have, or that at least can give some type of lesson or something
Hmm.
you can take away with, right?
Definitely.
I think those are the more profound ones and make sense why it would stick out in your like top 5 list.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what about Pride and Prejudice?
Same thing for the soundtrack. I think that for both of them, the soundtrack really helps to move the story along and helps to evoke different emotions. The aesthetic for Pride and Prejudice, I really appreciate, like the costuming and just the color schemes. I don't know if they have much control over that at the time of shooting, but
Yeah,
um,
probably.
yeah. And for again, believability of the actors, they really sell their parts
I want
and
to
they have
look
good
up
chemistry.
the cast in this.
Yeah, so Keira Knightley, McFadden, what's his name?
IMDb. Yeah, so Matthew McFadden, or is it
Yeah,
McFadden? McFadden.
there's some big names.
And Donald Sutherland, yeah,
Yeah,
classic. Um, I'm blanking on,
Jenna Maloney has gone on to star in some other things, or maybe not star, but be a supporting role in a lot of other big productions.
yeah, I'm blanking on the older lady's name. She's like
Oh, the
huge.
Dowager. Goodness.
Let's go to all cast and crew.
Yeah, Judy Dent.
Yeah, Dame Judy Dench,
Yeah,
right?
Judy
Yeah,
Dench. Yeah,
classic. She's in a lot of stuff.
yeah. So it's a very star-studded cast. And for that too, it really fills me with whimsy. I love Jane Austen, and I think that portrayal of her book, Pride and Prejudice, it was not necessarily, page to screen, but I think
Yeah.
the adaptation was fairly well done.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting even for not reading the books. Have you read the book?
I have, yes.
And do you think it's one of those that sticks to the book pretty well, like as far as the adaptation?
Fairly well. There are definitely, I mean, it's a long book, so there are definitely things that got cut out or changed
Right.
to make it a little bit more appealing to a wider audience, but for the most part, it, yeah, followed the book fairly well.
Yeah, I can always appreciate it even if it's not my favorite like
Yeah.
genre, but it's good writing and witty lines, funny
Hmm.
lines, and then uh,
Yeah.
a good romance story. So
Oh
I
no, that
appreciate
seemed,
that because it makes you feel intelligent
yeah.
because the language is good and Jane Austen obviously good writer.
Yeah. And there's the lesson too that people are not always what they appear to be upon first meeting.
Yeah.
There's always something going on behind the scene as well.
And yeah, because they're both kind of stubborn and
Both proud and
proud,
prejudiced.
and
Yeah.
obviously Pride and Prejudice. So the name of the movie. So yeah, classic.
Classic.
Yeah, I think there's good character development even in the short frame of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a key aspect to movies that I like or appreciate a lot. So,
Definitely.
because yeah, you know, there's some times where it's like this would almost be better as a TV show because there's not enough time to like for the characters to develop,
Fully develop, yeah.
or it feels like too rushed. But I felt like the pacing was good,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave everyone enough background and
Yeah.
enough ups and downs in the plot. So
Yeah. I also love the subtleties of the cinematography in this film too. They're just like tiny snippets of scenes that really add a lot of depth. Even if it's just like a 5-second scene, just adds so much more to the story and what's going on.
yeah, kind of like when he was, or there's multiple scenes when they're
Mm-hmm.
like overlooking the valley or
Yeah.
whatever, and
My favorite one is where Mr. Darcy is helping Elizabeth into the carriage, and then it shows him stretching his hand, like to get the feeling of her hand in his hand as he's walking away.
yeah,
Yeah.
key moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Where
like
you can
little,
see there's a change in his
yeah,
attitude towards her, but she's not quite aware of it yet.
little like subtleties. Yeah, in the nonverbal
Mm-hmm.
communication. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes for good art, artistic appeal,
Yeah.
appreciation. And there's been what multiple movies of this book.
Yeah, multiple adaptations of all Jane Austen's works, I feel like. And still coming, there's still more coming out.
I mean, I'm sure it's huge. I don't have the stats for
Mm-hmm.
the revenue it generated, but you can see
Yeah.
right here nominated for 4 Oscars and 13 wins,
Yeah. And this wasn't even
59 total nominations for different awards. So
and this wasn't even the first adaptation.
Keira Knightley got Best Performance nominee.
I feel like this was early on in Keira Knightley's career as well. Maybe one of her first films.
Oh, so yeah, this is for, like we were mentioning, Best Achievement in Art Direction for
Mm-hmm.
the art director Sarah Greenwood and the set director Katie Spencer.
Yeah, the location was amazing.
So that kind of corresponds to what we were mentioning. And yeah, I don't know a lot about the Oscars or about the Academy Awards and different stuff, but I think it is a decent gauge for how good a movie is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think the Academy can probably be snobby, obviously, and
Maybe a little
but
partial or biased.
yeah. So, because I think they for sure would miss good independent
Mm-hmm.
films, right? But then
Yeah.
there's different avenues for that too,
Yeah.
like the Cannes Festival and different
Is it?
stuff like that, Sundance
Yeah,
Festival.
Sundance.
So
Yeah.
it's still good to look at, I think, and still a good barometer for the quality of a movie, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, any others in your top five?
I think as I'm sure I've mentioned to you before, that the fact that they're watchable over and over again, I've literally watched Pride and Prejudice maybe several times in a week, and
Yeah,
just I don't get sick of it. And I think um, that aspect of it, in my mind, sets those two movies apart from other films. But I still have a great appreciation for things like the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan,
yeah,
and some of his other films like Interstellar and Inception. Um, The Princess Bride is a classic. I really enjoy that one. There's one similar to it called Stardust.
Hmm.
that follows the same frame, a little bit of everything, action, romance, fantasy, all in one movie. A
So
little
it's
bit all over the board. I also enjoy
yeah,
movies like Hot Fuzz and Hot Rod and ones that can make you laugh.
yeah. So it's more of set on the top two and then still
Yeah,
undecided on the next three.
undecided. Like I said, it's hard to pick. I maybe
Yeah, it
wouldn't say
is.
that Hot Fuzz or Hot Rod are like favorites, but I do enjoy them enough
Yeah,
to want to watch them again.
yeah, and those are for comedy,
Hmm.
but it could be. I just said top five, so it could be any genre. So
Yeah,
that's, I guess, in my own personal top five, comedy is lower, but
yeah.
I also don't know that many
And
comedies, so
I think that's like maybe a difference of taste as well because I definitely gravitate more towards feel good or like lighthearted things that are easily palatable um, for the most part. I mean, Christopher Nolan's works are not necessarily easily palatable, but there are things that I enjoy about them that make them still rank high in my list of favorites.
yeah.
But for the most part, I gravitate towards things that, like you said, have good pacing, good story, but usually have a relatively happy ending.
So no Disney that you thought of?
Not in my favorites. There are quite a few Disney movies that are good, but I don't think that I would count any of them in my favorites.
Okay, interesting.
I do watch a lot of Disney. I work with children quite a bit, and so I need to be up to date with Disney in my repertoire. But I wouldn't necessarily say that any of those things are my favorite, out and out.
Okay, so also give you a prompt for uh favorite genres. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't necessarily say top five or anything, but
No.
I don't know. We can maybe go into what genres you like and why.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely say that um, rom-com is maybe, it used to be one of my favorites, but I don't know. I think, like I had mentioned, that believability of the story or believability of the actors at least is like higher ranking for me now. And I think a lot of the rom-coms nowadays are not necessarily believable. They're, obviously comedic, romantic. It's
Yeah,
lighthearted usually. So it's nice to take in a rom-com every so often, but not so much my favorite as what it once was. I
yeah.
think, yeah.
I'm pretty picky with rom-coms because of that. Yeah,
Hmm.
because it's just a lot of them. You feel like they're too
Yeah.
unbelievable.
They're disillusioned for the
And
most part,
yeah,
not reality.
right. And it's like, and now a lot of people are like, this kind of sets a bad standard for
Definitely.
romance and
Yeah, I think that in my own experience that's why um, I don't know, embarking on the world of dating, I had high expectations because of rom-coms and
yeah,
that
it
sort of
makes me
thing.
look bad.
No, it doesn't. No, but I guess not necessarily high expectations, but unrealistic expectations for just how things play out
Yeah,
in real life compared to how they play out in film.
all the meet cutes and whatever.
Hmm.
It's just a little far-fetched. Yeah,
Yeah. Although I will say that the classics of You've Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle and those ones,
yeah,
they are not necessarily realistic, but they're realistic enough
yeah,
to make them still quite enjoyable. I love Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks.
yeah. Aren't those both Meg
Yeah,
Ryan and
and
Tom
Tom
Hanks?
Hanks, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen them both. It's
Hmm.
been a while. Yeah, those ones are, I agree, probably more realistic.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can appreciate it because there's pretty decent character development and not, yeah, like kind of almost whimsical, like magical kind of crap that
Yeah.
happens in a lot of rom-coms.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm not well versed in rom-coms, obviously. So
I also, with Pride and Prejudice being up there and having mentioned that I love Jane Austen and adaptations of her books,
Hmm.
that I would say that the genre of historical drama or period drama is one of my favorites,
Yeah.
or just adaptations of books in general. I read a lot of classic literature, and so things like um, John Steinbeck's books being adapted for screen. Um,
Have you seen the East of Eden
I have not seen
movie?
East of Eden yet. That's on my watch
I think
list.
it's on HBO.
You should watch it.
Wasn't it? I thought you added it to the list there.
I added it to the list there. Probably
I
so.
think so.
Um, but yeah, Charlotte Brant's Jane Eyre is also a good one.
Hmm.
I've been watching not film but TV Call the Midwife lately, which is set in 1950s England. So I've been
Yeah.
enjoying that.
Same genre. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And of Green Gables film adaptations.
Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like any of those World War II type movies? 'Cause that's like historical.
Yeah, I don't naturally gravitate towards war films, but I find them very interesting. I think we watched Dunkirk together, and
Yeah.
that
Didn't we
was
watch
good.
Hacksaw Ridge too?
We did,
That's what
yes.
that came to mind for
Yeah,
historical drama.
yeah. For some of those, I think because for some of them, there's such a specific time frame that they're focusing on with the films that sometimes the pacing is a little bit slow for me. I feel like with Dunkirk, that was my main thing. It was a very interesting movie, but
That
the
one was
pacing of it
slow.
was really slow.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I do enjoy them. I like learning while I'm watching my movies as well. Makes me feel productive.
Yeah.
I also would say that fantasy probably ranks up there with genres that I enjoy.
Fantasy?
But
Okay.
yeah, well, the title of fantasy feels a little weird to say out loud, but I'm thinking like The Hobbit. I
Well,
feel like
yeah, that's
Star
fantasy.
Wars would fall into that as well.
Yeah. That's like sci-fi, yeah,
Yeah,
which is,
sci-fi, correct.
well,
A
sci-fi
branch, a
fantasy, so.
branch of fantasy, yeah. I enjoy fantasy because I like most often, um, the fantasy movies that I watch have some sort of a lighthearted aspect to them. Um, oh, I can't think of their names right now. Is it Pippin and Merryweather?
Yeah,
In
from
for the
Lord of the
Hobbits and Lord
Rings.
of the Rings, yeah.
Yeah.
That they provide the comedic relief while there's still this fantastical journey happening. I don't know. I've always been, I feel like, partial to fantasy, like even in books and things growing up. And so I think that that's kind of stuck with me to some extent. I mean, I would even consider like movies like Princess Diaries to be somewhat of a fantasy type thing because it's not
A little
necessarily
bit.
realistic for your estranged grandmother to come visit you and tell you that you're a princess.
Yeah.
Although many girls dream.
That's kind of like Disney fantasy.
Yeah, modern fantasy, I suppose, even too. You
But
could
even
consider it.
like Princess Bride is
Hmm.
kind of fantasy.
Yeah, it's fantasy. Stardust, I would consider fantasy as well.
Have you seen that movie Willow?
Willow. No, I don't believe so.
I
What's
haven't
it
seen
about?
it in a while, but I feel like that's kind of fantasy also.
Um, yeah, I also really enjoy the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Narnia Chronicles,
Yeah,
Chronicles
okay.
of Narnia
Yeah,
movies. Yeah,
classics.
I think, yeah, probably with those, it's like they're enough, obviously they're fantasy, they're fantastical settings, and so it's enough removed from reality that I don't feel the things that are happening in those movies, the bad things, they don't feel realistic. And so even if
Sure.
there are heavier moments in them, like um, I don't know, they don't like weigh on you so much. Like I said, I'm an emotional person. I respond emotionally to things, so I can enjoy watching fantasy movies that may have heavier aspects to them because I can detach them from reality more than I can movies that are more realistic or realistically set
Yeah.
that have heavier or darker things happening in them.
Yeah,
That's
I could see that.
probably why I don't enjoy horror or scary things, scary movies as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking I almost watch fantasy in a way that like a lot of people watch action maybe.
Mm.
Because I think it's cool for some of the stuff. Like I was thinking of Witcher, the
Yeah,
TV
yeah,
series, you know, how just the abilities that they have and the magic and monsters and stuff, like just like the cool
yeah,
aspects. I mean, I obviously like good writing and stuff,
yeah.
but then even like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars,
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, I almost watch that fantasy because I that's what I think is cool
Yeah,
versus like uh maybe your typical action of like cars and guns and car chases and
yeah.
which some of that, you know, you like. I mean, I like the Matrix, you know.
Hmm.
So it depends, but I
Yeah.
was just thinking of that.
And that's just like discussing storyline. I mean, you also consider that usually the costuming and the landscape and the locations are a lot more,
Yeah, cinematography.
vibrant and kind of out there at times. And the story, the pacing is usually a lot faster too because they're telling a full story in their movie.
Faster in fantasy stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, because it is like condensing a book into, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is that you're watching this movie. They are condensing a full story down on
Yeah,
screen, so they have to keep the pacing up.
and some of them are just long enough,
Yeah,
like their series.
yeah.
Looks like kind of wrapping up on time, which is good. We can keep going, obviously. For
I was going to talk about Wes Anderson.
yeah, no, I'm saying that I was gonna lead into my kind of final prompt for if you have any favorite actors, writers, directors, anything. It could be producer to anyone that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I would say I don't necessarily have favorite actors. I'm not very great with names and faces. But I do have favorite filmmakers, and not necessarily in line with my favorite movies, but I enjoy Christopher Nolan, like I said,
Yeah,
um, Wes Anderson, M. Night Shyamalan, and I would say
classic.
Quentin Tarantino also finds his way up there as well.
So, would you say all of these I introduced you to?
I would say that.
Let's go.
Yes, you definitely broadened my repertoire, I suppose you could say. Yeah, even though people give The Village quite a hard time, it's got a special place in my heart because it's the first quote unquote
First one that
scary movie that I
we watched.
tolerated. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's not
yeah.
even that scary, but
M Night gets crap for pretty much all of his movies, I think. But
mm,
I like that one, yeah, and I like a lot of his stuff.
yeah,
He has a few bad ones,
there's
obviously,
a couple that are out
and
there, but
like he got destroyed for Avatar:
yeah,
The Last Airbender because that was
yeah.
so bad.
His,
And I think everyone agrees, even if
yeah,
you're an M Night fan, that was bad,
yeah,
which is unfortunate. But yeah, if he sticks to his kind of niche of like suspense
mm-hmm,
films, he does well.
yeah, definitely. Thinking like Split, which I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to watch a movie like that on my own, but how that was like,
Interesting,
yeah, it
yeah.
was a very interesting story. I think it was very well crafted.
Which yeah, that was a sequel of
Mm-hmm.
the
Oh,
I
did it
think
come
it's
before Glass?
Unbreakable or something like that. That could be a
Yeah,
totally different movie, but
it's well,
let's pull up M. Night's.
That's a Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, Bruce Willis.
Mm-hmm. It's a part
Did
of the
we
three.
watch that one?
I don't believe we watched Unbreakable. We watched Split and Glass.
Glass, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so Unbreakable was the first one.
And I think we skipped that. I can't remember why. Maybe it was going to be too much for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought we watched it one time, but maybe not. But yeah, I'm looking at his film list here. A lot of these are good. Unbreakable, Science, The Village, Lady in the Water. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, that's honestly, like, I've seen suspense and horror stuff. Not as much horror. Like, I also don't really like horror that much, but
yeah,
that one kind of scared me more than like some horror stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's so well done with how like suspenseful certain scenes are, and I don't know, spoiler if you haven't seen it, I guess, but like the grass dogs, if you remember that. I don't know if you've seen that,
I've
I
not
guess.
seen Unbreakable. No, I think.
No, I'm talking about Lady in the Water.
Oh, Lady in the Water. Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of like a fantasy story almost, because it's like some mystical lady just appears from the sky pretty much. And there's like these dogs that are, well, they're like wolves really.
Yeah.
That are gonna attack her, and they can blend in with the grass. And they have some different scenes where they're like creeping along, and it shows like from the dog's eyes perspective, like looking at her, like looking at different guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how critically acclaimed that one is, but I really liked it. Another good one where there's pretty good character, well, I don't know, character development, kind of, I guess. It's a little bit quick because you don't really get to know a lot of the characters, but definitely Paul Giamatti's character. Bryce Dallas Howard is the girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that.
There's a lot of good people in this. Jeffrey Wright, I like. Sarita Chowdhury, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I've seen her in a lot of stuff too. Even Jared Harris. I remember he doesn't have a big role, I don't think, but he's a big time actor. So yeah, sorry to kind of go on the tangent there, but I agree with M. Night.
Yeah, I know Quentin Tarantino is kind of a controversial character as a person, but I appreciate the aesthetic that he brings to a lot of his films. I can't say that I necessarily appreciate about probably half of his movies, but I don't know, there's something so shocking about like the Kill Bill movies and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and like I feel like a lot of Django Unchained, though they're not necessarily accurate depictions of historical events or
have you seen Inglourious Basterds?
Yes, I'm thinking of that one too.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily accurate, I feel like, to the time or place of what things happen, like how things happen, but I feel like that adds to the shock value. And even though they are very graphic when it comes to the violence, it happens in almost like a nonchalant way.
Well, it happens in a kind of an over the top way, right? So then it's
so
almost
over
like
the top that it feels like it's
almost more palatable.
Much. Yeah.
Because it's so fake looking.
So crazy. Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
I would agree with that. Because I do okay with like some violence being graphic, but I don't know if the level of violence in his movies was done any other way, I feel like it wouldn't be palatable for me.
Yeah. I probably agree because I don't want to see gore really.
No.
But like his stories are written well enough, yeah, that
Yeah,
even if it's a little bit gross, you can
yeah.
look over it.
And they more often than not have an interesting aesthetic too, which is something I appreciate about Wes Anderson. I feel like he has a pretty consistent appreciation for aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure.
I also really
It's full of
appreciate
him.
his pacing and framing of different scenes. Especially, I'm thinking of the French Dispatch, where they. I didn't necessarily enjoy that film, but I enjoyed a lot of the more,
Kind of the set design.
yeah, like more of the aspects of filmmaking that went into it.
Yeah, the art direction and
Yeah,
the
like I mentioned, the staging of scenes, the
yeah.
costuming, color choices that he uses for his films.
Yeah, I felt that was very much kind of like an art project
Yeah, definitely.
more than uh getting into it for the story.
Yeah,
Part of it probably was that we saw it in theaters and I need subtitles to like keep track of the story a lot of the times, but
there was a lot happening.
because they are, I feel like all of his films, the dialogue is very quick,
Hmm.
fast paced, and so yeah, it's. I've only seen it once. Definitely would probably watch it again to get another appreciation of it.
Yeah.
Come up with a full review of it probably, but yeah, definitely well acclaimed.
Hmm.
I think for one of his. Any other highlights from his films that you like?
I really enjoyed the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yeah, that one's good.
And while there are aspects of Moonrise Kingdom that I didn't really appreciate, I think that one, I think it may have been the first Wes Anderson that I saw. And so it's kind of got a
Yeah.
special place in my heart that, um, yeah, again, just kind of the whimsical aspect, these kids acting like adults.
I really liked the Royal Tenenbaums.
I enjoyed that one as
I
well.
gave that like a good review on Letterboxd.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, because that yeah I haven't seen all of his. There's more that I need to see, but I felt
Hmm.
like out of a lot of his ones that I've seen, there was kind of an earlier one, obviously 2001, and it was more like story driven, character development driven.
Yeah,
So I appreciated it because I still like the art and the set direction, whatever the technical term is for his films, and I appreciate that a lot. But I also like, I think for personally, more of what I like is the good story and
hmm,
interesting stories. So that was definitely my favorite of his work.
yeah.
Any others that you wanted to touch on?
I feel like Christopher Nolan kind of,
Oh, right.
he
You
goes.
mentioned that.
You almost don't need to mention him because he's all over the place nowadays.
I'm definitely
Same.
planning on getting into Christopher Nolan films in future
Hmm.
episodes of the pod.
Yeah, I really appreciate. So I love when movies on both ends of the extreme. I love when they're really easily palatable, like kind of serve things up to you really well. But I also enjoy when they make you think
Yeah.
and they're unpredictable. And I think that Christopher Nolan standardly does a good job at making you really think and pay attention to his films.
Yeah. I think they're still, yeah, they're still palatable for the general audience, right? Because,
Hmm.
like, the Dark Knight series
Yeah.
was huge for, like, all audiences and
Hmm.
I think brought attention to him. And I mean, I'm I don't know. Maybe he was big before that. He had some good films before Dark Knight, but I feel like that's when he really kind of got mainstream because The Dark Knight was like mainstream, so that was a huge hit for him.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or movie stuff that you wanted to touch on?
I feel like I've shared my piece. My
Cool.
very amateur approach to film and TV.
Well, we're all amateurs, right?
We
So there's
are.
no
We are all friendly
right or
critics.
wrong way to do it. Yeah, this is the Friendly Critic podcast. So I enjoy, yeah, just hearing people's thoughts on why they watch movies, what they like in
Yeah.
movies. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoy hearing what you have to say about movies and TV shows. You have a lot of insight that I don't always see.
Well, I don't know about that, but you also, yeah, it's good to get your perspective on movies too, because you have some good ones that I don't think to watch, like Pride and Prejudice and stuff, and those are stuff like that's definitely good, and it's good to branch out,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't always like I need to, so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way.
Well, cool.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Friendly Critic podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can go ahead and leave a 5-star rating on either Spotify or Apple, wherever you find this. And if you didn't, feel free to leave some feedback. I think there's comment system, or that's something I'll look into in the future, is how to get feedback from you guys. So yeah, I want to keep improving and keep getting better at this, and hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again.